Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second in the edition of the virtual Salon series for Salon le Voile. My name is Sarah Pringle. I'm from Art Partners. We're an art consultancy based in Hong Kong, and it's my pleasure to be here today speaking to two Vietnamese-based artists, Giang and Saeko Ando. And today they're going to be joining us in the second of this series because they are two of the artists that have been selected by the Villa team to produce a site-specific commissioned artwork for the Villa as part of a collection that is being put together that will be shown throughout the Heritage Villa. The subject of the talk today is women in contemporary art, very broad, but it's specific to these two women and their contemporary art practice. So really what we'd like to do is I'll start off and we'll talk to Giang. She can tell us a bit about her artistic practice, and then Saeko will also do the same. And then at the end, we'll have a conversation a little bit more specifically about how they sort of feel as women working in the arts, their experience, a bit more of a general discussion. So Giang, if we can start with you. I know we're having a look at some pictures here from the Villa, but if you can maybe show up a few images of your practice, I always think that's a good way to start. You studied, I know, in the UK, but also overseas, and you know you've also exhibited a lot internationally, in particular right here in Hong Kong. At the moment, if there's anybody listening to the podcast that is going to Art Basel, you have to go and see the installation. Unfortunately, I'm not physically able to be there, so I'm watching it virtually, but it's a really great installation that is being shown in the Discoveries room at Art Basel. So perhaps we can put up, Giang, if we can put up maybe some of your slides and you can start talking about your work. And really just the inspirations behind your practice as being a relative, I want to say young, and it's all relative, as a very young artist practicing in Vietnam today.
Hello everyone, I'm Giang. I'm an artist based in Hanoi, Vietnam. It's my pleasure to be here to share with everyone my journey in the art world. So I had my BA in art education in the Vietnam University of Fine Art, and then I had my MA in visual practice at the Commonwealth College in the UK. So my practice mostly including drawing and sculpture, and it often posed the question of the systematization of human memory and by a study of the archive and interdisciplinary collaborative research. I was compelled by the violence of erasure in the process of categorizing history and its human and non-human worlds. So I often explore a vast medium such as like coal or plaster, stone, plastic. What I try to do is to reveal the symbolic weight of materiality and reaccess the near hidden colonial imprimatur and cultural superstition or social stigma. So in many of my works, I take the inspiration from architecture, especially the artifacts, the architectural artifacts that I found in my home. For example, the work that you are looking at the moment is like a traditional gate that often installed near the altar in a Vietnamese home. It separates the spiritual world and the human world according to our Vietnamese tradition. So ruin as the built environment in the absence of a human presence has been a long-standing fascination of mine. So to evoke a sense of nostalgia, the ruins are often casted in plaster. This is like a pair of wooden parallel. I think you would find this very common in Chinese or Vietnamese traditional house. Often carved on them are like the synonym. And then this work is also based on a found artifact, which is a box that contains beetle. In Vietnamese tradition, the beetle is a food that people often offer to the guests to welcome them to our home. And then it is like the beginning of the conversation. So this one is called the one who chews the beetle is mute. In this one, I collaborated with the artisan in a craft village, Mother Pearl Inlay village in northern Vietnam. So together with the artisan, we came up with the pattern design, and I did some addition to the design, and then I make the plaster sculpture. And it is also the first time for the artisan to practice his craft on plaster. Usually this could be done on wood. So, you know, it's like the fruit of the collaboration is always come up with new idea for both the traditional craft and also for my practice.
So I like the way, you know, I thought it was interesting you were saying that earlier. So yes, you're working with the traditional craftspeople, but this is your design, Giang. And then you're finding new ways when you work together, pushing those boundaries of the craftspeople, but also your contemporary art ideas.
Yes, it's always very difficult to convince artisans who are used with the way they do things to do something new. But you know, when you successfully did that, then you will achieve something totally wonderful, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's unique, isn't it? So it's something different.
So this work continues my interest in architecture elements, and it is also my biggest installation so far. It is based on a communal house in my own hometown outside of Hanoi. So communal house is where people of a village often gather, and it is also where they place the statue of the god of the village, where they would do worship and you know, all the activities, religious and spiritual activities of the whole village. It's like the symbol. It contains a lot of decoration motif, which is the symbol of the people's belief, and yeah. It is like one village would have only one communal house.
Yeah. And were these parts of the colonial house existing parts, or did you work with artisans to recreate them?
Oh no, I actually recreate them.
Yeah.
That's based on the real structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one is I will talk about the series of work that I'm exhibiting in Art Basel, Hong Kong at the moment. The title of the series is except from the 1931 Paris Colonial Exhibition flyer, and it literally means watery and greenery. These words are often, these terms are often used to describe Indochina during the colonial time. Is like suggesting about mystical and beautiful, tropical, dreamlike land. And I was very inspired by how people look at the past, the Indochina, as some sort of collective, imaginary, exotic land. So in this series, I conduct research on the presentation of Vietnam in the colonial exhibition of 1907 and 1931 in Paris. And I also study artist Le Badang, who is a Vietnamese French artist. He was an Indo-Chinese soldier worker in France during the Second World War. So the main focal point was also a communal house, which was commissioned in 1905 in Vietnam to be exhibited in that colonial exhibition. So I was very interested in the story of the house, moving from the southern Vietnam to Marseille and then to Paris. And then in the end, at 1920, it was converted into the temple of the Indo-Chinese soldier, a temple dedicated to the memory of Indo-Chinese soldier who died for France in the Great War. So these are some images of the process of making the work. I look at the, I went to the library and then I look at the archive of these colonial exhibitions. And then from there, using Le Badang's embossing technique, which including using carving on lino and then using a press machine to push out the paper. And the whole process is very much like an artisan's work, which demand a lot of precise work and also patience, because it was a totally new technique to me. But what I love about this technique is that it helped me to reproduce the photographic images from the archive and discolor and erase all the details of the events, thus leaving enough traces of the history. And then this work would require the viewer's attempt to look closely, like the process of recalling memory.
Mm. So these were all based on those archive photographs.
Yes.
Using his technique. And was this in Paris or was it in Vietnam, the archive?
This happened in Paris.
Yeah.
And this is my booth in Art Basel, Hong Kong. So I hope you guys can visit it. In this solo show, I'm also exhibiting an embroidery piece.
And this is a new technique for you. So this will be your first embroidery work.
Yes, right? And for this work, I'm also collaborated with an artisan in an embroidery village. Yeah, in Vietnam, especially in northern Vietnam, it's like each village would focus on one craft. So you will have mother of pearl inlay village, and then the embroidery village. And then for when it is my pleasure to be invited to create a work for Villa le Voile, and when I visited the site, I was very impressed with all the detail and the architecture of the building, especially its feminine characteristic. And I think it is very magical that all these mural painting were found like under many layers of paint throughout all this time. And to me, the process of restoration of the villa is like an archaeologist, with excavation site like my work. And that process inspires me a lot in my creation for the building, for the villa.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, in fact, it was interesting when you see your work, and we're looking at a photograph here of some of the restoration process that is done by the heritage architects Spinelli from Italy. And what I think is kind of really amazing with your work, I mean, you've got Villa le Voile it's a Vietnamese building, but it's based on the architecture is very French, but you also have Vietnamese and you also have Chinese references. And I just feel that so much of your work investigates that. And here, this almost looks like a piece of your work because of the plaster and how it's aged. And it's almost like they're pulling off the layers and discovering the history and the story of this building. So I think it's going to be a fantastic commission to that, and perfect artwork to sit in this particular building. Yeah. I think actually when we were talking about sort of the layers and pulling back, it then really reminded me, I mean, we'll talk to Saeko as well, who's being, you know, she's a Japanese born artist, but like you, Giang, she's, you know, residing in northern Vietnam, and certainly was initially studying up in the north. But Saeko, you kind of came to Vietnam a long time ago, and so now, you know, even speaking to people in a Villa team, I mean, you're considered a Vietnamese artist. You've been, your whole practice has been in Vietnam, and Vietnam is your home. So
it is.
Perhaps you can sort of talk a bit about how you got to, you know, start using Vietnamese lacquer as your medium for your artistic practice.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you very much for Salon le Voile for having me on this talk. Well, first of all, I'd like to tell you that people often think that being a Japanese from the country that is a well-known history of art, of lacquer, urushi, people immediately misunderstand that I was a lacquer artist to start with, and came to Vietnam and inspired by the crafts and techniques here, and started learning and emerging these two art of lacquer. But it is actually a completely different story. I came to Vietnam in 1995. It was completely different world from how it is right now in Vietnam. I was very lucky to meet Mr. Chin Tuan, who is a contemporary the lacquer painting artist. I asked him if I could study with him, and without hesitation, he took me in, and I started to learn the Vietnamese lacquer painting. And then I was more interested, more I understand about the art, more I was interested in the material itself. So I started to learn more traditional skills, like processing the raw material, raw lacquer, sap of lacquer, and making the base, and of course painting, using the lacquer to paint the artworks, and also polishing, sanding and polishing. So I studied with Mr. Duan Chi Chung, who is in the middle of this middle painting. And I also learned with this master craftsman, Lam Hu Ching. He taught me for 6 years how to make the lacquer base, which is usually done by a craft person. So I consider myself as like an in-between craft person and an artist. Yeah. So I was trained in Hanoi, but now I'm based in Hoi An, which is a historical town in the central Vietnam. But I live in farming area. So I'm surrounded by beautiful paddy field, and also there are, like, you know, rich green environment, which changes every day when I walk. Like, I will see new flowers that I didn't see the day before, or I see, you know, big growth in a couple of days. And that has been inspiring me a lot when I create my artwork, because the nature is my theme and the source of inspiration of my art. Next one, please. So yes, this is where I work. I'm lucky that I can work in an environment like that. And then the next, this one, this is the Vietnamese lacquer. Actually, this material, this medium itself is the source of my inspiration. So what lacquer? I think most of the Asian people would have some idea what lacquer is. It is sap from the type of tree called the lacquer tree. But lacquer tree can be different from one country to another. And it's basically, it's a blood of tree. So in Japan, we you know, value this a lot, because we are borrowing this blood to give new life to something, which is usually something that we create to use, or artworks. So lacquer solidifies itself because this the reason why it starts bleeding is so that it will stop bleeding. So when the lacquer is exposed to the air, what happens is that enzyme within the sap of lacquer become active under certain condition. In Vietnam, for Vietnamese lacquer, it is usually like around 30 degrees Celsius. Sometimes it's lower. And then it starts catching oxygen from H2O in the atmosphere. That means warm temperatures and high humidity will help the natural lacquer to solidify. We simply say it dries quicker or slower, but that's how it works. Next one, please. So in Japan, we have different species of lacquer tree, and the China, Korea, they have same species of tree. And Vietnam has a regional, very different tree from those trees. And Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, and it used to be Laos, they have, again, completely different type of tree. So they are quite different in characteristic. And Vietnamese lacquer, I can say the best characteristic is the transparency. Although it's not so hard and glossy as Japanese counterpart, so it's not very suitable for bowls and trays that we produce in Japan. But for painting that we create, artwork we create, it's ideal because the high transparency means like you can see the color of the pigment vividly. Okay, next one, please. So this chemical reaction that I mentioned about, it will continue. So when I sand and polish and finish my artwork, it's not the end. It's not how it's going to end up. So I speculate how it's going to be and then finish my artwork. So it's after collectors or gallery buy my painting or exhibit my painting, and with that time it changes. It becomes more transparent, translucent, the color becomes vivid, and what's hidden under some layers can be seen through layers of lacquer. So it's the art which ages, and it is something that I value most. There is the word in Japanese called utsuroi. That's the aesthetic value in our culture. That's, as I wrote here, it's an impermanence of all things and transience of nature. So that's what I try to capture using this natural lacquer from Vietnam with that characteristic. Next one, please. So this is my collection biology. These are painted on acrylic board, which is quite original substrate that I don't think anybody else has done that so far. I have been working on this. Maybe there are somebody who's doing that, but I have been working on this medium, this substrate for 7 or 8 years. It is because that's the best way to enhance the beauty of transparency of the natural lacquer. And these are inspired by the energy of the nature in Hoi An. So I don't draw lines, I don't make sketches. I just spontaneously create some textures and then build layers in sand and polish. So I show, this is the front part. And this is the back part, but they are one piece of artwork. So this series can be enjoyed in 4 different ways. The front, when the lighting comes from the front and the lighting from the back, and the back part, same, when the light comes from the front and the lighting from the back.
And this is something you were saying is very unique to the Vietnamese lacquer. You wouldn't be able to do this using the other lacquer because it's too dense. So
probably I've never tried, but yeah, to a certain extent, I think they can do something similar. But what is difficult is acrylic can bend a little bit. And for example, Japanese lacquer is so solid, it might crack, while Vietnamese lacquer is
more
quite,
flexible.
yeah, flexible. Yes.
Yeah.
This one is on more traditional VUP baseboard. The base is the wood. So wood give you some impression that it's more, you know, friendly with the environment, but actually I'm not sure about it. That's why another reason why I started to try on acrylic base is because, you know, this plywood, which is the substrate, could come from a plantation after, you know, they cut off all the natural jungle. So that's my approach to the environmental issue as well.
Interesting. Yeah. And you've also kind of, you're mixing different, you were saying using the acrylic with the lacquer is something a bit unique to yourself as well. So
yes.
you're pushing the medium and making it your own, really.
So I could do this because I have the knowledge and experience that I inherited from the craft people that I studied with. I was very lucky that I came quite early, 95. Back then there were still like a very, very experienced craft people still working, but Mr. Lam Fu Ting, my master for base board, he has retired and he passed away last year.
Oh, wow. Sorry to hear.
So this is my gallery.
It's good they shared that knowledge with you.
Yes, he didn't have any apprentice. I'm the only one.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, it's good. I mean, it's fantastic that you have that knowledge and you've been sharing it as well with people. So
right. I feel like this is my mission.
Yeah.
Okay, so this collection zoology. These are made like this one is created in 2020, so it's kind of recent work. But this animal subject, something like, to me, it's the basic. This is where I started. Because when I was studying, mastering the art, I didn't want to spend too much time coming up with the design concept, doing the sketching. I just wanted to come to the workshop every single day and then play with lacquer, learn the skill. So as a child, I always liked animals. So I have done a lot of sketching as a child already. So it just naturally came from me without going outside and spending time. So the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years, maybe less than 10 years, I was mainly painting animal or birds or some living creatures that I felt beautiful, fascinated by. But later on, I realized that what interests me, captivates me, is actually not the shape of the animals or creatures. It's the textures and it's the colors and the movement or the feel of organic feeling, which I believe is the best material for that is natural lacquer from Vietnam because of the transparency and the glossiness. After some years, I realized this glossiness and transparency gives people this impression that even if it doesn't take shape, it doesn't have shape or anything, just showing the texture, people feel that this must be something organic, something the cell from some kind of organism, right? So I stopped for some collection. I just let my inspiration flow and I just create the texture and still end up feeling really some organic feeling. So how I create this artwork, okay, the base, the key medium is of course natural lacquer. Natural lacquer can be mixed with pigment and used as color. And the next one, please. And also this the cohesiveness of the material can be utilized when we do the inlay work, like a shell, eggshell, and also it can be used as glue to stick gold leaves, silver leaves. And also, well, for the lacquer painting, it's not used for that purpose, but we can utilize lacquer to make something 3D, like make shapes with that. So the lacquer, natural lacquer, to me, although everybody thinks that it's traditional medium, to me, it's not traditional. It's more futuristic. It's even, solve the problem of the environmental issue. Maybe it helps to help as well. And it's kind of like high tech, really high tech medium. So, well, when it comes to modern contemporary art creation, it's a new medium as well. It's not traditional at all. Next one, please. So I use color and different material for layering, just like what you were saying, talking about with Lezan. It was really fascinating to visit the Villa le Voile because of that reason too. I found so many layers of time and history, and it feels like, it's the same concept, right? Building the layers of something. And next one, please. After layering, what we do is sanding. Sometimes I use sandstone, sometimes sandpaper to bring the underlying layer back to the surface. So when I work with lacquer, it's about the adjustment of thickness, which layer I want to bring back to the surface. Next one, please. And then finally, we polish. I polish using hand. Different artists use different techniques. Some use wax or like a varnish on the surface. But what I do is like I sand the painting, and they use finer and finer sandpaper or sandstone. And finally, I use some polishing powder, and I use hand to polish. Next
I love
one,
how
please.
you were saying earlier how traditionally they would use hair, but really good quality, hair.
Traditionally.
Yeah, but now people
was
dye their hair, blow dry their hair, do things you can't find.
Exactly. It was supposed to be when I studied. Well, I had to polish my painting with human hair, ladies' hair, which is not straight permed or dyed. But then nowadays, there are not I wouldn't say no one, but not many people has hair like that. So we have to subsidize with the sandpaper, finer sandpaper. Well, so in the end, I like to extend my gratitude that I'm part of this Villa project, because it's really fascinating. This, unveiling the layers, which is to me means so much. It's almost like what I do, and also the fact that this villa was built almost the same time as the art of lacquer painting was established. So yeah, the art of lacquer was sort of like invented based on the craft of lacquer in Vietnam. So it was 1925 that the first art school was established in Hanoi, and then the French teachers and students and the master craft people from craft villages worked together and come up with the idea. I mean, the technique to use this indigenous material for Western style fine art. And it was 1930s that around that time it was established as one new form of pictorial art. So what I have been doing using this traditional lacquer, Vietnamese lacquer, but in my own way, and using new other material and the substrate, I think this is one layer of my history. And I feel like, I am not only me, but everybody working on this project, the Villa project, is adding a new layer of our time. And thank you again
I
for
think you're absolutely
having
right.
me on this talk and also in this project. Thank you.
No, that's great, Saeko. Thank you very much. No, I think that's so perfect because, as you said, you know, the building itself was built between 1927 and 1930. So almost like absolutely. And as you know, we talked about this before. What was quite interesting is yes, lacquer was old, but in a very new way, and it's used as a medium for fine artists. But this building at that time would be doing, you know, I feel like the parallels between your work and Giang's work in the sense that the villa was using all of those old architecture references, but to build a very new, it was a steel building. So it was using contemporary engineering to produce a modern building, but referencing, you know, historic Vietnamese, Chinese, and, you know, Parisian architecture features. And I think both of you with your work, you know, it's perfect. I know we've got one of the listeners has actually asked us, William, to say, you know, what work do you think, you know, can you talk about what you're going to create for the villa? And I know you don't want to show us anything because, you know, you're still in progress, but, you know, have you got any ideas at the moment? Can you talk about what you're thinking just very briefly that you'd like to make for the villa, if you've got any idea?
Giang,
I think Giang, you can, if
at the moment I'm having several different ideas, but most of them will be based similar to my practice, will be based on some object, household object. And I think and also in this project I'm looking forward to working with the artisan and come up with new material, new medium again.
No, it's fine. No, we're so excited. I think, William, look, you're just going to have to come to the villa early next year for the opening and see what the works are. I know as well, speaking to Saeko, you know, for her, obviously, it's very much the lacquer is quite spontaneous. So, you know, I think it evolves your whole practice. So I think for you, it's something that you're just going to be, you know, we'll have to wait until next year to see that. I know we were speaking earlier, and obviously the title for the talk is sort of women contemporary practice, and I thought it was quite interesting in both your conversations, your experience, and especially Giang, for you. I know when we spoke earlier, you were saying how, you know, for women, there's much less women that go to art school than there are men, and just, you know, from experience, say from in Western art colleges, you tend to find, in fact, it's almost opposite. The only difference is you have more women, but in terms of how, as we know, it's very common how you see it's mainly men fetching the highest prices at auctions. It's most public collections and galleries show mostly male artists, but those things are really changing, and it you know, it does seem apparent that you're noticing a big kind of progression in Vietnam.
I think it was more than 10 years ago when I attended Vietnam University of Fine Art, and when I made that decision, my parents were not very happy because, you know, at that time in Vietnam, being an artist were not taken seriously as an occupation that can support your family. So it's even more insane for a woman to pursue, you know, that career. And in my class, there were 30 something students, but it was only 6 or 7 female students. And then after finishing all the study, when I work as a sculptor, I feel like, you know, at that time, not many people taking me seriously because there are not many female sculptors. Even in the school, I think there were rarely, maybe one year there would be only 1 or 2 female students study that major. I guess it is because being a sculptor requires you a lot of muscle strength, and it is just something not very common for a woman to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's across the board, but what's interesting, I know in your practice, because not only are you a practicing artist, but you've also set up an art space, and tell me about that. I mean, what sort of prompted you to want to create your own venue as well? Because that's obviously a whole other skill set in terms of managing and curating.
Yeah, I think we opened Six Space. We meet together with my co-founder. We opened Six Space in 2015, and at that time in Hanoi, there were mostly foreigner institutions like the Girls Institute or Institut Français or Japan Foundation. So we felt there was a need for an independent art space to support young artists and also foster conversation and interdisciplinary collaboration. So we did a lot of different activities at the space, like exhibition. We did project. We sent artists overseas, and I think at that time it was very naturally to do what we do, and and then I also realized that in the art scene, in Vietnam art scene, actually it is mostly women who are like the organizers
Mm.
of art event, or I guess women used to be like supported,
In the
role.
supportive role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it has changed definitely in these days.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fantastic to hear. And I think one of the things I thought it was interesting, you'd mentioned earlier that you also noticed there's more female curators, and and people like yourself and your partner who are sort of running an art space. And that just means that the perspective is a bit more balanced. So you have, there's plenty of men who are curating and heading up institutions. Now that we're seeing more of a balance in those people that are in a position to select the work, it's not surprising that you're seeing sort of more female artists included in shows and being, part of collections and being, put into museums and galleries. So,
and I think it's also because the process of making a work in like contemporary artwork now is very different from
yeah,
a traditional artwork. It allows different people with different practices, different approaches. It is more open to women. I mean, it gives people more opportunity because it's no longer the strict and traditional practice anymore.
that's a good point, actually. I hadn't really thought of that before. I mean, I know obviously, Saeko, you're still doing something which is more time consuming, but you're right. I think for you as a understanding your practice, you've really had to dedicate your life to it. I mean, you said to me it's 6 years to learn how to do that the really master the lacquer technique. And it doesn't mean, I mean, you obviously, Giang, you're using lots of different techniques in your work, but you're right. In a lot of contemporary art practice, you can do something. It's very ideas based. The idea is very, very strong, and so you're able to maybe communicate that idea in a way that perhaps is not as time consuming as studying something as traditional as lacquer. There's no fast way of doing that. You have to, you've got your ideas and your interpretation, but there's a dedication for actually mastering a very traditional technique. So I mean, for you, Saeko, I mean, how have you've obviously found, for you love that. So that's part of the process of your art making is dedicating yourself to your medium. So.
Yes. I don't know. Well, it took me a long time, and it's still, I feel like I'm still learning.
Yeah.
There's no end to discovering something new, and I feel very grateful that I met people who first initially made me feel like, what is this? Curiosity, and then I started I tried it, and then I had this environment to continue. And I do have experienced challenges being a woman back in Japan, back here in Vietnam. But there are always like flip sides.
Yeah.
You see, like when I started mastering the art in 90s, it's completely male dominated, like of craft people, right? You can imagine. And but everybody was so kind to me. You know, I didn't speak a word. I did know Xin Chao and come on, it's the hi and thank you, but I didn't know the language at all. But the people are so nice to me when I show the passion. And I think, it could be what they say, it's a garant thing. In Vietnamese, they use the French term garant, it's gentleman thing. So I was part of artistic community. At the same time, I was mastering the art with the craftsman workshops. So if a male Vietnamese person tried to do that, it's almost like a,
that might have been harder for them.
Right? Yeah. You have to choose side or something. That's commonly felt that way, right? But me, I could learn from both. Nobody complained.
Yeah.
And no, I think it was partly because I was a woman.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I did have difficult time. I still next life, I want to be a woman again. But there are some difficulty when I had children. Yeah, it was physically very, I mean, the time-wise, I didn't have time. I was not given time.
Yeah.
It's sad to say that I was given time.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
So for first, I don't know, maybe some couple years or some years, I constantly felt like feeling scared. People will forget me, or, I'm losing all the opportunity to show my art. But one gallery owner, she is a lady as well. She says, Saeko, look at this way. You don't have to think about whether if your art can be sold or not. I mean, at least you take care of the children and your husband, worry about the economy of the family. So you do whatever your passion tells you to do. I didn't have to compromise. I just made sure that every day I do what I do, lacquer, but without having the pressure of I had to make money to survive. Yeah. And thanks to that, now I have my skill and confidence. And now being a single mother, I really understand the pressure. If I was a young man having the pressure, I have to earn a living. Being an artist, it must have been so stressful that I might have to compromise. But I was very lucky that I had this time to gain the experience and create build I don't know, my style of lacquer painting. So yes, there are difficulty challenges, but it's a flip side.
No, that's good. There's always that balance, isn't there?
Yeah.
Saeko, what you said really comfort me, give me big comfort, because I just had a son who
I know your young mom.
Yeah. So it has been really, really different to me, because a lot of my friends ask me, so when are you come back to work? And when I started to work, I went to visit the villa when I just gave birth 2 months, and then people ask me, how could you leave your child and come back to work so early, and I feel like a lot of pressure to a woman when they are seen as mostly as a mother role rather than, social status, So yeah, I'm just trying to adjusting everything.
Yeah, I think that's actually be good if there's anybody. I know we've got a wonderful turnout, and that's great to see that so many people have listened in. I mean, this would be a great time if anybody has any questions, please message. I know William did earlier, which was wonderful. I got that message. If anybody's got any other questions that you'd like me to ask, that would be great. Right. I think, okay, there's one more. I think, right, it's about the villa actually. So just to sort of end on that. So the last question we've got here is talking about, you visited the villa, and obviously you were saying, Giang, you know, you visited it I didn't realize it was only 2 months after you just had your baby, which was wonderful. And of course we had all the craziness with lockdown prior to that. But, you know, what were your first sort of impressions, and you know, did that, when you went to I know that you're talking about, we asked earlier about your ideas of what work, but I think the question here is, I think they're just interested to know what your first impressions were when you actually physically stood in the villa, you know, and if that changed maybe ideas that you might have had for your work.
You know,
I don't know what.
When I came to the villa, I was totally in awe because there are just so many, like the villa is covered with so many tales, like fairy tales or folklore, and I feel like it just had so much, it's very rich in culture, and it gives me a lot of materials to work with. I don't know if I can reveal any tales yet, but yeah, it was, and like you said earlier, it is the combination, beautiful combination of French and Chinese and Vietnamese culture all in one. And yeah, I was
That's
really,
great.
yeah, impressed and
Yeah.
also overwhelmed at first. But I mean, all the tales, all the stories are just so, you know, powerful. So I really
Yeah.
hope I can take a little bit of those stories and put them together in my work.
I'm sure, and obviously we can't wait to see that. I think as well for you, I'm looking now, I'm very sort of mindful of the time. I think, Saeko, for you, I mean, maybe you can just start by, you know, finish the talk and say what your first impressions were of the villa when you actually walked into the building itself.
It was very interesting because in Japan, each building, especially like a historical building, stick to one, I don't know, one theme or one feeling. There is a unity, right?
Yeah.
Which is one way, but in this villa, there are essence of so many different things. You just, you know, look this way and you find this, and look that way and then you find that, and to me it's like a, I don't know, you know, you open a drawer box and whoa, oh my God. So it was very interesting. And this is a very symbolic of Saigon to me. You know, it's almost like a melting pot of different culture. And you know, so I really hope that some people can really actually come. I know that everything is now online, but when the things change, I hope people will come and actually visit the villa. Yes.
I'm sure there is no doubt. I'm sure, you know, it's going to be incredibly popular. I mean, it's one of only sort of 52 heritage buildings in the city. And the fact that I believe this is the only one that was sort of brought into private hands, and the renovation that is going on behind it. And obviously working with fantastic artists like the two of you here today. So look, I'd love to thank everybody for joining on the talk, and I hope that that's inspired everyone to want to go and visit the villa in 2023 when it opens up. And please do sort of follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and just keep up to date with how the villa is evolving, because it's, you know, I think one of the most wonderful things about working on it is it's going to be open to the public. And I think the fact that people can go and as you said, Saeko, you know, there's different rooms, so there's you can rent out spaces, you can eat there, you can go and see art there, you know, and enjoy the landscape. I mean, all these different activities that will be happening in the building. So we look forward to sort of seeing everybody then. And I can't wait to see what you girls come up with. That'd be brilliant. Okay. Thank you to everybody attending.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.